ones who are not. So I'm going to operate with this philosophy, although he would tell me you're still late because it's after 2 o'clock. But we're going to proceed accordingly. We have here a representative from the mayor's office. And of course, the mayor's office will be a part of our discussion today and what the city has to offer as it relates to urban farming and urban agriculture itself. I want to say this, the intention of this is to be what we call a round table discussion. And we have not been operating in this manner for a long period of time, but we wanted to start this so it will be a process where people are engaged, they're comfortable to ask questions as the resource people make that presentation and talk about what they have available and how to access those questions are asked. And in a particular case, if the question is not asked, or maybe it's a question that should be asked by you as participants, and it's not asked, then I will ask the question to make sure that the right information flows accordingly. Again, roundtable discussion where we can have open discussion about the resources that's available, how to access those resources, and the benefit of those resources. Not just from an urban farm perspective, but also from the rural standpoint. We'll talk about air property as well as other areas. I'm going to come back and we'll talk more about that as what the meeting itself as we proceed. But I'm going to ask Mr. Christopher Harvey if he will come with the welcome and to tell us about what the city of Little Rock is doing. Because understand the city of Little Rock has potential that can be a major player from an urban agriculture perspective and market opportunities for urban farms. Mr. Harvey.
Also, good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Christopher Harvey, and I serve as Senior Advisor to the Mayor and Chief Strategy Officer at the City of Little Rock. So I want to officially welcome you all on behalf of Mayor Frank Scott Jr., who unfortunately is not able to join us here this afternoon. But I officially want to welcome you all as the Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation here to the City of Little Rock, and here at Philander Smith College for your Rural Community and Economic Development Summit. So earlier this week, the mayor talked through his state of the city, and a big part of our focus at the City of Little Rock will be addressing food insecurity. For those that may be aware, a few of the things that we've done already, we have allocated, the City Board of Directors has allocated $1 million from American Rescue funding, our American Rescue Plan Act funding to address food deserts specifically. Also, recently, the mayor recently appointed a food desert task force where he has assigned different members of the community who have a general passion and commitment to wanting to address food insecurity. So we have a food desert task force. But another thing that we're going to be focusing on, that was just recently alluded to, a big priority for the mayor in the second term is going to be on urban agriculture. So we know that urban agriculture allows for the development of a variety of environmental, economic, and social benefits to the surrounding communities. And so potentially, with us looking to potentially invest in community, we talk about hydroponic, aeroponic, and aquaponic facilities and vertical production, where we're seeing areas in the city of Little Rock where we kind of really focus on. And so our goal is to look into that and see how sustainable that could be for us in the city of Little Rock. And so we would love for you all to be a potential thought partner in what that process looks like as the mayor starts the second term here. So again, definitely excited to be here, and again, welcome to the city of Little Rock here at Philander College. And I will say, for a personal privilege, When I first moved here to Little Rock a few years ago, I started working here at Philander College. So I'm always excited to be back here. And again, thank you all, and I'm definitely hoping that your summit is both informative and productive. Thank you.
Thank you again, Christopher. Now, Dr. King went a little bit off schedule, off program, because we were supposed to open where I could introduce this wonderful man. But just to give you a little overview about who we are the Arkansas Land and Community Development Corporation. My name is Ashley Crockett, and I am a farm advisor. So just to give you a brief overview again of who we are and what we do. We're established back in 1980 as a 501c3 nonprofit historical land-based organization with an extensive background in providing training and technical assistance to African American socially disadvantaged, limited resource groups of people. Based in Fargo, which is on the outskirts of Franklin, ALCDC is active in 42 counties where it operates programs for beginning farmers, limited resources, minority farmers, youth services, and community and housing development. In addition to that, our goal and aim is working to reverse the conditions of that leads to loss of Black and owned land and the decline in the number of small farms in Arkansas. ALCDC works diligently to aid Black and other farmers in gaining access to credit, providing technical and training assistance, as well as marketing opportunity or marketing support and conflict resolution with their property. So again, we are the ALCDC, and we hold these meetings in those 42 counties to make you all aware of those resources that are available. So without further ado, we have Dr. Calvin King, who is the CEO of ALCDC, and he's going to be talking about the motto and the theme of this summit, One USDA Urban and Rural Summit.
Ms. Ashley, I apologize. I was following the direction of my dad. I wasn't, I should have been following the direction of those who keep me on the right track. I just heard that voice saying, okay, it's 2 o'clock, you gotta get started. As I mentioned earlier, it's gonna be an open discussion session, but prior to that point, and prior to say, we really appreciate all of you who come out to be a part of this event on this beautiful, rainy, cloudy day. And I say that this beautiful, rainy, cloudy day because I am one at my age now, any day that I'm able to witness and see as another day, it's a beautiful day. It can be raining, it can be snowing, it can be ice, whatever. I just say, oh, it's a beautiful day. And it's a blessing to be able to see it. So it's such a beautiful day. It makes it a little bit more challenging. A little bit more challenging. There was this saying that I have they say that you believe in the Son of God on your cloudy days and on your sunny days. And you believe in his love even when you're alone. So when you're with anybody and not with anybody, you believe in his love and you know his love is always with you. And that you believe also even when he's silent. Even when he's silent, there's no thunder, there's no lightning, anything else. He's always at work, providing for us with his grace and his mercy. So on the day, we appreciate all that. Today, we're going to talk about prosperity communities. We're going to talk about cultivation, resource, the opportunities that's available and how to access those resources. We're going to talk about farm finance, availability of farm finance, and how to access those resources, including for urban agriculture. And we have an FSA person that's here now. And hopefully we can have some more discussions about that. And when you talk about the task force itself for the city of Little Rock and agriculture, we can talk more as a part of our discussions and how the task force in the mayor's office, and hope that we will be able to, either as a liaison or some other way, be as much a part of that as you move it forward in the planning process. We're going to talk about air property. Air property, and of course, air property, both from a barrier perspective, and when I say barriers, that air property can be a barrier to accessing certain resources that's available in some of the program areas with USDA. But then also, while it is a barrier, it can be addressed. That's one of the things that we do. We work with families in dealing with air property issues. I already know that 9.9 times out of 10, as the city moves forward in putting in place its plan for urban agriculture and locations where there may be property that's a part of the land bank itself that is most suitable and beneficial for urban agriculture. And probably, I will promise you, you're going to run into that barrier, and you're going to see that as an issue in certain cases where there is air property, and you may not. Because one of the things about the land bank allows cities, once they're established, to deal with clearing title to those properties and having a title ownership within the land bank itself, and they can transfer ownership of that property then over to other individuals by way of sale. And I don't know how they what type of special deals that they make on abandoned property or properties in the land bank. But what I have found is that in most cases, urban areas and cities that have the availability of inventory property, that it can be a prime opportunity for individuals who are looking to make certain investments or having access to real estate in those areas. But we'll have some discussions about that. The city of a resource, a major resource itself for urban agriculture, the resource agencies that can work with individuals to become successful in being an urban farmer, both from the conservation perspective and from the financing standpoint. So I'm going to stop at this point. I'm not going to come back to the point. As far as the process itself is concerned, in order for everyone to be able to be received or heard by those who are listening online, we're going to have to speak into the microphone. So we have a mic that's right at the front area there. So all of our resource individuals will be speaking into the mic. And we will also make that mic available to individuals who will have any particular question or presentation that they want to make that may not be on the agenda. So individuals with your questions, in order for the listening audience that's online to hear what that question may be, then we're going to get the microphone to you. If they can't hear them from the mics that's on the cameras, and I'm assuming they can't, they may not pick you up from the camera microphone. And everything, it is being recorded. One of the other things I'm going to mention, I'm going to show you these documents when I go back to my seat. There's some information that's on the table over here, our display table. That's resource information. We have one publication that's on the table, and it is called a special edition of our newsletter. And that special edition of the newsletter that came out the latter part of last year. That particular document of publication is one what I call keepsake, because that publication has all of the USDA agencies as a part of it and the type of resources they have to offer. So it's a good reference guide, as I say. It has the USDA agencies that's not represented here today, such as ag marketing services. And it also has a list of all of those agencies that provide grant dollars, loan dollars, conservation program dollars, and things of that nature. We received quite a few comments when we sent that publication out. People saying it was a very good guide. There was a lot of information in it. And we didn't put that together, don't get me wrong. We didn't put that information guide together. It came from the USDA. So we're just a part of the outreach and distribution network as an organization to make sure it gets to the broader public. But that's one publication that you should get. The other one is a report that recently came out by USDA and it deals with equity. It's the Equity Commission report, USDA Equity Commission. That report just recently got publicized, and this Equity Commission was a part of legislation under the Biden administration that was established for the purpose of looking at issues or areas as it relates to equity and equality, particularly for the underserved population. And when I say the underserved population and the minority population. So that commission report has some very, very, very beneficial information as it has to do with the intent of the administration itself and recommendation that is now that will be going into from the commission to the secretary, and the secretary has a letter with that as well from the second perspective as to directions of USDA and what they want to do from an opportunity perspective. Those are two particular documents. The other document that hopefully all of you will get, if I get a copy of it, because is one that's on air property. And it is an updated version of an educational publication we put out some years ago on air property, how it addresses certain issues with air property, what air property really is. But again, it's a resource and educational guide for individuals. I hope it will be something beneficial to you, and it will allow you to be more of an advocate as it relates to that issue on air property, and having a resource guide that you can either reference to someone else and let other individuals know where they can get the information from. As they contact us, then we will provide the publication to them accordingly. So I'm going to stop at this point. I'm going back over to where the presentation will be coming from as it relates to the summit and those resource individuals that are here that will answer all of your questions and all of my questions as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Alvin, to talk about NRCS.
Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, the Natural Resource Conservation Service is an organization in which you can apply for assistance for your conservation needs to address resource concerns. Well, today I want to talk about how do you apply for NRCS programs initially. Initially, it's a collaboration between NRCS and FSA. You will initially begin talking to the Farm Service Agency about your land, your farm number, your tract number, identifying that you've done HEL on your operation, in turn, once that's completed, it's similar to what we know as our social security numbers. That farm has a number that identifies it as the location and the dynamics of their operation. Once that is identified, you then are to go next door to the Natural Resource Conservation Service. At the Natural Resource Conservation Service, that's where you will engage in a conversation between your local district conservationist or his designee, which is either the state, the soil conservationist or the soil technician. At that time, you will identify what type of operation you might have, what it is that you're looking to do, identifying some of the concerns that you actually have on that operation. So regardless to if you are a row crop farmer, an urban farmer trying to get started, or a forest land owner, that conservationist will talk to you about what you have and set up an appointment basically to come out and walk that land with you and talk about what is available. Here recently, we have a deadline for high tunnels, which is March 13th. Basically, it's a special initiative that we have that you can go in and sign up for, looking at putting a high tunnel on your operation. We also are in the currently equipped, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program is a year-round program. It allows you to sign up for practices such as nutrient management, pest management, high tunnels, looking at how you monitor irrigation water management, just to name a few. There are a number of practices that are available to the NRCS, but it takes that conversation with your local district conservationist or his designee to have that discussion, or our partners. Because with all that we have to offer, a lot of the things that we are able to do is made affordable because of the relationships we have with our community-based organizations, such as the Arkansas Land and Farm Development Corporation. So we continue to strive to help producers put conservation on the ground through our conservation practices. At this time, as I said earlier, I know the high tunnel operating is March 13th for that particular program. When we talk about urban gardening, urban farming, which is a new piece for NRCS, you know, we're dealing with soil health, we're dealing with irrigation and water conservation, we're dealing with weeds and pest control, as well as the input of high tunnels. So there's a gamut of things that you are able to apply for and work through. But the question is, as I've often said to producers, it's kind of like grandma's cake. That cake is sitting out there, it's a big pretty cake, but you can only take a slice at a time. So identify what it is you are looking for and have the discussion of how you'd like to get there. All right, I'll take the question.
Thank you, Mr. Pierre. Before I even move on further, I just want to recognize we do also have Jessica Willis with Farm Service Agency here, and I think that's. Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Pierre.
Mr. Perry, what seasonal high tunnel?
The seasonal high tunnel, don't Michael there.
Yes. Do you have the say, for instance, I just need a well on my farm.
As long as it's alternative crops, you can apply for a well to alternative crops.
Okay.
Is that answer? Thomas Barber.
They didn't get one.
As far as the applying for a well, you can only apply for a well through alternative crops or capital.
Or what?
Capital for alternative crops. To answer my question.
that answers your question, okay.
Tell them what the seasonal high home.
Robert, what we want to do is,
On cattle.
and to engage in discussion, not every presentation we're gonna have, we have certain questions, and I do want to move the question, then we're gonna go with FSA, from here. And Mr. Peter, of course, I just want to bring this attention, one of the first agencies in this commission report, is equity, and what's the name right up the equity there? That's under this commission report.
Conservation cooperative agreements.
Yeah. So that's one of the key areas that's in the commission report also. It talks about the conservation. But question to be again, but the high tones are sort of like, someone call them blue houses, some of them call them greenhouses, but they look like a greenhouse. They look like a greenhouse, except it does not have a heating system, in them. But it does, it prolongs the production time period for crops. Vegetable crops. Mr. Pierce said that you apply for the irrigation under the alternative crops. And Mr. Pierce said under alternative crops, I'm assuming you're talking about where there's more acres involved, but it's not in the equal. Do you apply for a separate fund?
You apply for alternative crops through equal. It is one of the funding categories that is identified for smaller vegetable production opportunities. That is a funding code that is identified.
So basically what he's saying is that when you apply for equal, and I know Ms. Bone gave reference to that on the irrigation, when you apply for equal, there are coding systems in this conservation manual, there's a conservation manual. So in that equal contract, then you need to put that in as a part of that equal agreement.
Right, let me talk a little bit about it. So when you go into your NRCS office, one of the things that we try to offer is the conservation practice catalog. In that practice catalog, it identifies the name of the practice associated with that particular practice. It also gives you a definition and examples of where that practice is able to be used. When sitting down with your district conservationist, that practice catalog is a great tool to utilize when identifying the items that you're looking to potentially address with the concerns on your operation. So if you're coming into the office and you have an erosion problem, well, we're looking at, okay, what is needed? It ties to soil health. It ties to, is it degradation of the soil? Do we have water runoff? What is causing this problem and which practice is actually able to be utilized? If you have, and I tell people a lot of times to make it simple, when we're going down the highway and we see those furrow irrigated roads, and that water is flushing down those fields, and you see it running out at the end of those fields, that's that erosion, and that's that not controlling the amount of water that's being utilized on that farming operation. Well, with the IWM, irrigation water management system that we identify, well, that's one of the issues that we utilize that practice to use pipe planner in a method to slow down just free flowing water to be able to address that land equally with water based on hole sizing of the holes for the irrigation system. But the key factor is the conversation that you have with the district conservationists or the designee. That's where we identify what's going on your farm, what's potential for your farm, and it starts a relationship that should be lasting for a while with you as you go through that contract and years to come.
First, we did want some additional clarity on that. The EQIP is only, one of the programs. I know we have some individuals here, that have spoken to me about other issues that they have with their land, other than, the EQIP program opportunity, but they have flood issues. They have flood issues and because of production practices that are taking place, particularly by some of the larger farmers at this point, it is causing some of the smaller landowners to experience serious flooding, and in certain cases where it is blocking access to their land on an ongoing basis. Again, if you're dealing with flooding, there are conservation practices for flooding. If you're dealing with other issues itself, as it relates to the land itself, then 9.9 times out of 10, there are conservation practices that can be applied. Flooding, erosion, are being just some of those things. But can you speak to the issue around flooding and conservation and what you have to offer from a flooding perspective?
Yes. From an NRCS standpoint, when it comes to flooding, we have the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. That particular program is where you identify with your local, local mayor, that in turn contacts NRCS to talk about as far as the flooding issues that you have in that particular area or concern. When you go to the farm and you look at the flooding issues, it could be that it's drainage issues. It could be that you need ditch cleanouts. There are various practices that are identified, but if there is a storm per se, then you're looking at the environmental EWP, or watershed protection. There are two areas, but on your farm, you have 608, 607 is the code for surface drainage control, so that you can go in and clean those ditches out, and you can apply for it through your environmental quality incentive program application.
Now you say you go to the mayor, but not these landowners, particularly on the airport situation, they're not in the city, but you still have to go to the local mayor.
You would go to the county judge, the mayor, who would actually reach out to NRCS to request assistance to come in and talk about how we could potentially help you. Also, we will potentially tie in FEMA to that conversation as well of how do we address the concern.
Okay, look, I have another. I'm pretty sure that we get into another thing now individual. Flooding is the issue, particularly when you look at a lot of unserved communities that we have both in the city on the urban side, and you also find that to be an issue in the rural areas as well. Now, you mentioned watershed. I don't know how many of you have heard about watersheds today. Has anyone heard about watersheds and how watersheds operate that directly? So I'm going to need you back into Peter now to talk more about how these waters, just recently NRCS funded 3 counties. It was Lee County, St. Francis County, and Phillips County. And they have committed some $93 million. What is big? It was big. It was big. I don't know what it was. $93 million to by way of dealing with watersheds and flooding in those areas. Now, as I understood it, that Lee County being one, and I see I have an individual down there, I know he got land over there in Lee County, so if there's a flooding issue in your area, then you all have not been contacted, you get inquiring with the county judge about that watershed project and the flooding that may be occurring in you all's area. But 3 counties, Lee, St. Francis, and Phillips County, they are dealing with a planning process now, possibly some implementation of that plan as it has to do with watersheds. Now, Mr. Beer will correct me if I'm wrong. He gave reference to the county judge and to the mayor. Our NRCS office is something to reach out. Now, the conservation district is involved with that. With watershed.
In retrospect, actually, the conservation districts are connected in the watersheds because that's each county, each NRCS office has a conservation district that is connected to NRCS. They actually identify in the county with the constituents some of the concerns or issues that are going on. When we're talking about the watersheds, that's another area within NRCS that deals strictly with watersheds. You're talking about the PM 566. That's where you're referencing currently. This is a collaboration with the funds that you're talking about was a collaboration that was identified with NRCS and those identified mayors and counties to help address those flooding concerns here in Arkansas. It has been identified, they have laid out some of the things that they know they're doing, and they're still in the process of identifying how they're going to address some of those flooding concerns. I believe there's meetings that will be being held in those counties to identify which constituents, what's happening and how they're looking forward to addressing that here in the near future.
What about counties that's not included? And we have some landowners here that's not in Lee County, Phillips County, or St. Francis County. But they're in counties that are contiguous, connecting to those counties. So
as far as as far as how they would connect, I couldn't say per se. We would have to talk directly to Randy Childers, who is actually the one over that actual department. But I can definitely get you in contact with him in order to identify exactly what steps you'll take for those additional counties that have concerns. Okay. And then we have some more NRCS specialists that just came.
right, I'm not going to give you a rest now. Yes. People let me know. Okay, that's how they'll be using that. Here's a question too. We have he's got some backup. He's got other people that's coming in, and they're also with the NRCS. I'm going to go first. This is the equal manager. We have Mr. Corey Cornelius, who was here with us. So Mr. Cornelius, when you invite you then.
Good afternoon. My name is Corey Cornelius. I am Environmental Quality and Incentive Equal Program Manager here for NRCS State Office in the state of Arkansas. And just want to talk about some of the opportunities that we have right now. Currently, if you're not aware, one of the things that we are pushing right now is what we call our big three priorities: urban agriculture, climate smart agriculture, forestry, and equity. So a lot of what we're doing right now is basically focused on those three priorities, and a lot of opportunities that we have right now. A lot of the additional funding that we're getting with the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, is all tied to those big three priorities. And we just released some funding opportunities. One in particular, we had a high school initiative that we released. All participants around the state are eligible if they're interested in applying for high zone. We also, in addition to that, we have an urban ag push that we're focused on in Arkansas. And coming soon, we'll be releasing an announcement that we have a funding opportunity for urban ag. So that's one of the things we're pushing, along with just our general equip that we do every year. We always try to make sure that we try to reach every priority in the state. Whether you're a row crop farmer, you're a small alternative crop farmer, livestock farmer, forestry, or even confined animal operations. We try to touch all of that here in Arkansas. And equally kind of works as an umbrella. We get funding every year from Congress that comes down to us. And what we try to do is prioritize across the state. And we try to make sure it's as fair as possible. And as always, we always get more demand than we get dollars. But we try to spread those dollars around the best that we can. All our historically underserved producers, there's always an opportunity for historically underserved producers. There's a separate set of money set aside for historically underserved producers that help you compete better with some of the equal funding opportunities that we have. But just wanted to make you aware that some of the new opportunities, along with the Inflation Reduction Act that was just announced, that's another different set of money that we received to kind of focus on climate smart related practices and concerns. A lot of practices that helps towards reducing greenhouse gases and things that help the climate and nature of whole is a lot of what the Inflation Reduction Act is focused on, along with areas of equity and some areas of urban ag. So that's some of the new opportunities that we're seeing now in Arkansas. If you haven't seen any of that already, just stay tuned because we got more opportunities that's coming. The high tunnel, we just released it. I think the deadline to sign up for it, I believe it's next week, if I'm not mistaken. And the urban ag, we hadn't released it yet, but we should. And we always make sure that ALCDC gets all our announcement opportunities. So we know y'all have a different clientele than we see daily. So make sure that we get that out to make sure people are aware that they can compete and have an opportunity for some of these funds that we have. So that's basically all I have. Answer any questions.
Mr. Cornelius, the question is here, and I know everyone else has a question. You talked about the RA Inflation Reduction Act. I gave reference to the Equity Commission report, and of course, conservation is one of the things when you open it up, it says conservation equity, and that's what he was given reference to. But now on smart agriculture, well, we got everything I do wrong. Could you tell me smart agriculture, benefits of using smart agricultural practices, and how does smart agriculture fit with urban farming? We're not talking about the 2,000, 20,000 acre farmers. And we understand that when you talk about smart agriculture and certain practices that's being carried out on the land, then there are other benefits that come with that, be it from a cost share perspective, maybe certain incentive payments, but a little bit more about smart agriculture, what that really entails.
That the climate smart agriculture is basically it's a push to help improve some of the things we're seeing now that's going on with our climate change. And with this push, it's basically concentrating on some of those management practices, along with some other facilitating practices that go with reducing greenhouse gases and the emissions, and methane gases, things of that nature. Now, some of those practices, categories, some fit directly with urban agriculture and some are small farming and some don't. But we also have a separate category that we focus on with our urban and small farm mission. If that answers your question.
Yes, but there are certain, they couldn't understand that there are certain practices that you implement. It may be cover crops. I think there's one example that you put a cover crop in the winter time, and that is considered a smart agricultural practice. It may be crop rotation. There may be another. So if you're doing crop rotation, you're planting corn this year, if you urban farm or smaller producers, if you can also sport, in one area of your farm this go round and based on certain soil nutrient, elements, then maybe rubber to squash production versus producing peas. You may rotate from squash production on this side and you put peas in the next go round. And I'm assuming that would be one of those smart agricultural type of practices as well, along with the cover crop. So when I'm talking about smart agricultural practice, something you might do anyway. But the point is that there are benefits behind doing that, and there are program benefits behind doing it. And there are also dollar benefits behind doing it, because I don't know what it is. What's the average cost per acre when individuals are under what I think it's under CSB, conservation nutrition practices?
Well, those practices you just mentioned are available through the EQUIP program and the conservation program.
But those are smart agriculture. It applies under smart agriculture practices, but in the CSB conservation nutrition practices, and then there's so much that you can receive in program payments.
Right.
Payment benefits when you employ those practices.
Right.
That's what I make sure everyone understands. And when you employ those practices, why it may be on a farm that you're renting out. Now, why is that important if you're a landowner and you have the farm rented out? Well, that is important to you as a landowner, and even if it's property, because if they have certain conservation contracts on those farms, it's important to you from a landowner perspective, because it's also called soil nutrient practice, keeping up good soil health. Right, so the good soil health, you need your farm to be land to be healthy, to be a good farm. So you need to know whether or not an operator is employing these agricultural practices, conservation nutrient practices. And if you guys don't want to go directly to your operator about that, you just want to check with the RCS and based on your farm number and see if there's a conservation contract on your farm number. So you really be in my business. That's not about it. But so you want to know whether the conservation practices are important not only to the operator. Conservation practices are important to the landowner as well. If they're employing, you want those type of farmers, you want those type of operators on your land, and it could be that the operators don't even know about the program. As long as they can show, now they must have, I feel that they have control of that land by way of what, a lease agreement, either a lease agreement or administrative individual on that farm. So if an individual goes to NRCS or the operator of your farm or air property land, if they go in, they have to have a legal contract from you as an administrator for that air property. And if you sign, the administrator sign, and they have control of that land as the operator, and they can sign up for the program and receive the benefit of those program payments. Everything we're talking about here, we're not just talking about practice, we're not just talking about a program, we're talking about dollars. And I don't know, you heard me mention, they have allocated more resources under the Inflation Reduction Act program. Now, some of those resources were allocated under American rescue plan, I think, wasn't it? Okay, so it came out of the revenue rescue plan, what, 22006, I think it was, on the legislative area. So those are special dollars that were allocated to those acts by the present administration to expand services, particularly address the issue around equity and equality for the underserved segments of the population. That's the inclusion of the African American population, particularly, okay, in the unserved population. So dollars, more dollars, and even if you're not operating, and if you're a landowner or you engage in that property, then it is in the interest of the landowner and in the interest of the operator to apply for the resources, access to resources, and for the benefit of the land that you own. The other question, I know that others who have questions from Mr. Cornelius, now one other area, and I do want to make sure I'm getting this right. If a landowner already, this is new legislation, under our, this is new legislation, and new programs coming out. If an individual already has their land in a particular, under contract with a conservation program, and I won't say conservation easement as an example, but I'm gonna say, it is in a, let's say, let me use this as an example. This is gonna follow FSA on the program side, but I want to see if it's relevant to NRCS under smart agricultural practices. If they have it in the Conservation Reserve Program with Farm Service Agency, and they are employing certain practices that may not be smart agricultural practices, could they modify the practices that they are employing? I know FSA will speak to this more, modify those practices to qualify under smart agriculture with NRCS.
Make sure I get this right. So if they have a program contract, conservation reserve with Farm Service Agency, you're asking, can they have a contract through NRCS on our conservation programs?
A particular practice, and the aggravation of smart agriculture. I get smart agriculture, the FFA side and the smart agriculture on NRCS side. FSA, you have certain requirements when grasses and you put out, and the land is out for you, the way out, I think it's 15 years, up to, and they'll speak to this, I'm probably have this number wrong now, I think up to the maximum $240, $250 an acre.
No, I did the loans. I have to check with the program people.
Because they recently did information out FSA did, but under the CRP Conservation Reserve Program, if you own land and you're renting land out now to an operator, then an owner of land can sign up for the Conservation Reserve Program, which is not RCS, it's on the FSA Farm Services. If I'm not mistaken, and don't quote me on this, but if I'm remembering the information and when I was going through checking that program side of FSA a week or so ago, I think it's $240 per acre. The land qualified, it's erodible land. That being one of the characteristics, and then some others. I think it's $240 an acre, up to 15 years, and your land is not in production agriculture. You're not planting crops on it, and you're not doing livestock and things of that nature. So I mean, if you get $75 an acre and you qualify for the CRP program, then $240 an acre, it's up to. I'm saying yours would be that. I said up to.
Right.
So I'm right with $1 figure.
No, that's what I was gonna say, that value, I think varies.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna say you don't get that amount, but up to, I mean, I was talking with one gentleman just to check to see if he's gonna put his in, use an example, and I think he said he was qualified for like 112 or 120, dollars an acre. but he's still signing up. But there are certain requirements we have also, and what you have to do with the Conservation Reserve Program and going in, if you put, say, fescue grass out on it, or cover grass or whichever, then you have to cut it, I think, at least once a year, you go in and cut the grass on it. I have somebody go in and bush hog, and we had some in at one time, but what our requirements were then. So we had to go in and make sure we had bush hog and, you know, things of that nature, at least once a year. You want to do that anyway, otherwise, wait 15 years, you won't have no farm now. You have a whole bunch of trees and everything else, but y'all know that the demand on it. So that's certainly required. Is there anything else on the smart agricultural perspective of screens?
Just want to touch back on practice you mentioned. Those are all climate smart related practices. You cover crops, you reduce conservation intelligence, your nutrient management, all those are focused on soil health, which is a push that we're doing through climate smart agriculture. All of that's available in either one of our conservation programs, whether it's EQIP or CSP. And this graphic, we can talk more about CSP, but all of that is available under the climate smart priority that we have through EQIP. Those are practices that are available under the CSP. So if you are interested in doing any of that to improve your farm, as you said, soil health is a big thing that we push when we first meet with our producers, is to know what's in your soil, to know the nutrients you need, how to manage your nutrients in your soil. That's one of the first things we talk to with our participants when we go to the conservation plan, is to know your soil basically, because that's like the beginning of what you're doing. When you're growing your crops, you have to know how your soil is producing, what nutrients you need. If you need to do any type of pest management, that's also a practice that we pay. It's just like managing your weeds and so all of that is our practices that fall under the climate smart agriculture and forestry. And the forestry side of it is more focused on planting trees and doing forest stand improvement.
Doing forest stand improvements, okay. I have one question, and the question comes to me earlier, and I'm going to ask to you if they may have want to add on to this. Family on the air property went in on a conservation program. A lot of trees were planted, or could have been planted some years ago, and that was on the contract. So now we know that NRC has paid the contract, right? The family come to find out when they went back to check the property, there were no trees on the property at all. Now, my question is this, and I hope that this is beneficial for the audience and the people who have had a question regarding this. If that land is still under contract, and NRCS went out to do an inspection, would they be out of compliance? That's one question. The second question is the fact that this has occurred with this land, and this is their property situation with the administrator, the fact that this is occurred, can they go back into NRCS and get those trees replanted? That's all they replanted. They didn't get planted at all. You want to speak to that, sir?
I assumed there's no one.
Yeah, I just want to, I want him to get the question. I think we're going to be all right. Go ahead.
So, no one's living down near the property, and there wasn't anybody really checking, but the trees were supposed to be planted back, say, 2005, and now would be the time to harvest. We went down and looked, there was no trees. We even have a lumber company to look at it. They said there's no trees here.
So you're not sure the tree was ever planted,
Right, just not positive.
and there was a contract
There's a contract.
through our agency to pay assistance on planting those trees.
Yes.
Do you know if that happened? If we ever paid assistance on those
Yeah,
trees?
yeah, it was paid.
It was paid, so they had to plan, we paid assistance.
Yeah. There's a company out of North Little Rock that was supposed to come, they ordered the trees and supposed to plant.
And generally, how EQIP works is, when we enter into an agreement and contract with you, you are responsible for doing the work first. So you will implement the practice, and then we'll come out and do what we call certification check to make sure that you did those practices. And once we do that, then we'll reimburse you the part that we'll pay in the contract. So by you telling me that, that lets me know that the trees were planted at one point. And if we paid assistance on it, that means we certified and said that they were paid. So at that point, maybe somebody came in and clear cut it before you had an opportunity to do it. Sound to me like.
Now there are no stumps out there to indicate, you don't have a stump, no, there are no stumps.
Okay.
Yeah, there are no stumps to indicate that there were any trees.
So the other thing that may happen was they were planted and they maybe just didn't survive after the plant. And in that case, we have had circumstances where we can document that it didn't survive. Maybe we can do what we call reapplication at practice, where we can pay assistance on you replanting those trees. But that's all based on availability of funds. So in order to do that, we have to have funds available to do that. So and also that has to happen within a certain time. This being 2005 contract, pretty sure we passed the time frame to be able to do it. Now, you will have an opportunity to go in and reapply for a new contract to do it again. Especially with it being in 2005.
Right.
I'm pretty sure those trees, all our practices have what we call lifespan, which means that's the number of years we expect the practice to be fully functional once you implement it in the system. But again, in 2005 or around that time here, the contract, pretty sure it's past that lifespan. So you should be able to reapply if you still have resource needs like trees out there.
That was the reason for the compliance work, for the non-compliance issue, so that's you could go back in and start the project back. Okay, let me move on and put you on my time check since I'm talking too much. We're gonna go down to Mr. Reed, with Natural Resource Conservation Services, and she's gonna talk about CSP, she's the program manager for CSP.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? My name is Sherry DeGraffery, and I'm the Conservation Stewardship Program Manager for the state of Arkansas. CSP
Go ahead.
is the big sister, big brother to EQIP. So CSP is the follow-up for EQIP or follow-up for those conservation-minded producers. What the practices in CSP are considered enhancements. So these practices are used to enhance what you would already have done in Mr. Cornelius's program in EQIP. So we'll take cover crops since that is a very common practice. So you have the basic conservation practice of conservation of cover cropping that he would complete in his program. And let's say you're ready to step it up and come over to CSP. We have a plethora of enhancements that go from multi-species cover cropping to different cover crops that scavenger for resources, nutrients and resources to bring them to the front so that they can be utilized by the plant. So there's an opportunity to put more conservation on top of the ground that you have utilizing CSP. Now, the difference is CSP comes with what we call the land payment or an existing activity payment. So that existing activity payment will be based on the things that you are already doing. So if you are already implementing the basic practices, let's say for instance, you had ground that you had an equip and you take it out of equip because you completed a contract. You can roll that same ground into the conservation stewardship program, do the enhancements. And then besides getting paid for the enhancement, you would get an annual land payment based on the practices and the amount of acres that you have in the contract. Now, why that is important is because I always say, if you're utilizing these programs as they can be utilized, then equip you can use to fix your land. So those big structural practices, land leveling, pipes, and things of that nature, you can use that to fix your land. And once you've used that to fix your land, to have it drain the way you need to go so that it operates smoothly, you put conservation from the stewardship program on top that'll help manage and you learn to adopt those practices. Equip will keep your money going through the year because as you complete a practice, you can be paid. CSP can be that final piece that comes up and helps close any gaps that you may have experienced during the season. And there's a plethora of different practices that you can do from management practices, anything to flooding for ducks and leaving standing grain for wildlife. We have CSP IRA and Classic, and then we have CSP renewals. The renewals will be only offered for those that have CSP contracts that are ending. They have a one-time opportunity to step it up again to compete for another 5-year contract, but they only compete against the individuals that are in their same class of contract funding. Classic CSP, if let's say you don't get picked up in your renewal, Classic CSP, you can automatically be rolled into to compete. You should be automatically rolled unless you notify the office that you do not want to compete. So once you do that you can compete in CSP Classic. And that one you would compete with everyone else who did not make rules and any new applications and any deferred applicants. But you don't have the stewardship threshold. It's different than in CSP Classic. You have another way or another pathway towards funding. The big push here is urban. Now I will say this, we are looking to increase the number of participants and applicants in CSP in our HU and socially disadvantaged farmer pool, simply because we do not have it doesn't seem to be the same interest that we have in just general equal. And I think a lot of people are missing a great opportunity to add an additional funding source as well as conservation to their operations. And you have to think of it from the standpoint where the conservation aids you in reducing your input costs. Cannot tell you it will increase your yields, although I can say, haven't really seen a case where it doesn't, but we can't guarantee that. But what I can say is you see the reduction in your input costs with conservation. And it's just a great resource and a way to add to your bottom line and get the conservation on the ground.
Any questions from the audience?
And CSP also can be applied to urban and organics. So for those of you who have, or when we talk about the micro and the urban farming and things, and you're looking to go organic or transition to organic, we have a separate fund pool in CSP that is very underutilized, shall I say. So I would encourage, if you have organic producers or people that are interested in that, this is one program that you should really.
General question, what's the maximum contract dollar figure normally on the CSP?
So payment limitation, if you are an LLC or an individual, it's $200,000 per farm bill year. CSP contracts are a set contract period of 5 years. Your first year, you can have enhancements or practices if you want, but usually that first year is what we call a land payment. So, and your payment will be based on your conservation level activity at the time of enrollment. If you are a joint venture or a general partnership, your payment limitation for the same 5 years is $400,000. Now, in each of these, you can receive your payment. It used to be limited to, if you were that in that LLC or individual, $40,000 a year. And if you were in that general partnership or joint venture, $80,000 a year. Now that can be paid out in any increment, any increment in each year, as long as by the end of that 5th year, you have not gone over that maximum payment limitation.
Okay, make sure I'm clear, you say it's up to 250,000?
No, up to 200,000 if you are an individual or an LLC.
Okay, on the individual or LLC is up to 200,000.
Yes. If
And the
you are
400,000 comes in where?
general partnerships and joint ventures.
Joint partnerships and joint venture. Now, I want to hear about understand, particularly, I know we're talking about air property here also. In the case where you have an operator, and so you're the administrator of air property, when they sign up for CSP, the CSP dollars go to the operator. I want to be sure about the hearing.
For CSP, you have to be the operator of record or share in the expenses or the daily administration or farming operation. So you have to share in a risk in the farming operation to be eligible to enroll in CSP. And that application process is a little different than EQIP. EQIP, you have an application and you simply fill it out. CSP, your requirement is to fill that application out, but you also are to bring in your maps and delineate, meaning mark out or outline for the conservationists that you're working with, what grounds you are putting in the program, because with CSP, you have to enroll everything you have effective control over for 5 years. So that's for your land to be eligible to be in CSP. If you do not have effective control over this ground for 5 years, it is not eligible to be enrolled in CSP.
Now, I'm asking these questions just for which the certain questions that actually made. So all this information is very, very important. And individuals who are administrators over air property, when you start to talk about lease agreements, you need to know about these programs, contract dollar amounts to be possibly be involved on this land or on the air property land, one. But the other part to that, if they have a crop share lease agreement, then the owners of the property, they can get a share of the program payments.
That would have to, they can qualify, so that would have to be, we don't get into that would have to be worked out between the participant and their tenant, how they choose to come in and apply for the program. Now, we do have people that are in cost share agreements with landowners and the tenants, but that is usually worked out between them, and they come tell us.
I understand. I'm certain questions I'm asking is saying it is for the benefit of the audience, and because some people have multi-year lease agreements, 5 years, so like you say, to be in compliance, they must have control over that 5-year period of time. So you know the importance of people executing and giving long-term lease agreements. Minimum 5 years. On the other hand, if one want a 5-year lease agreement, that can also be justification as to why your rent is going to be more on a recurring basis, possibility. Because you want them to get the benefit of the program for your farming operation, one. But then on the other hand, you've been given a 2-year lease agreement, 1-year lease agreement, you may want to consider a multi-year lease agreement for the operator. So there will be added benefits for the operator in accessing programs. Hope I'm clear to those who are asking the question. Is that making sense to those individuals? Lease. And then we'll it's to the operator as far as I'm able to meet compliances and access to certain programs versus a year-to-year at a time. For the farm operator. Okay, I just, question I'm asking, I'm gonna make sure I get these questions answered by y'all here. It's not coming from me. So y'all heard it from them. You understand that? We go to these lease negotiations. Benefit fighting on long-term versus a short-term lease. Okay, does that make sense?
Good.
Oh, you, okay, all right. Okay, anyone else have a question? Y'all know, I get these 3 questions in advance, so I can ask questions. If everybody say you answer that question, you know, I'm good at it. Anyone else? Is there anything on this? Okay, we're gonna move now to Farm Service Agency. And let me just say, before Farm Service Agency comes on, I'm gonna have her introduce herself because I do not see a name here that says Farm Service. And don't be mad at me, I know I'm not calling a name. I got an excuse, you know, I'm old, you're young. So. This is one of the most research. When you start talking about agriculture, farming, and everything else, and so now the program side. So I'm not going to the program question. You made that very clear. You know, I'm not on the program. I'm not on the program side. I'm on the finance side. But Farm Service Agency, something you saying?
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Willis. I am the farm loan officer out of Lonoke County. The areas that I cover are Lonoke and Pulaski County. I'm pretty sure Dr. King, you want to focus on IRA and the loans that are available.
Yes.
IRA that came out, the Inflation Reduction Act that came out provides $3.1 billion in assistance for distressed farmers. And a part of the IRA is to directly expedite any assistance available for distressed borrowers with direct or guaranteed loans. So what we consider distressed farmers are farmers who have loans currently with FSA, whether they be directly through FSA or through our guaranteed loan program. And if your payment is coming up and you can see that you are unable to make your payment, you're considered distressed. If you are past due on your payment, you are considered distressed. And so there have been some funds set aside where FSA is making an effort in order to pay direct loans current as well as cover the next payment due for farmers. The first set of payments did go out in October of 22, and that was for any farmer who passed due as of October 31st. So as of right now, if you're in a position where you have a direct loan with FSA, and it's looking as if you won't be able to make your payment, or you already are delinquent, because I believe in Arkansas, most of our loan payments are due December 31st, then if you'll just contact your local FSA office and express to them that you will not be able to make your payment. Right now, we're doing what's called an inquiry form, where we just take your information down, and we're waiting to get further detail on our next steps. You also should have received a letter in February informing you that this assistance is available. And that's it as far as RA and where we are. But just for farming in general, whether we're talking about row crop, livestock, or urban farming, we have several different types of loans available. We have our farm ownership loans, which are to purchase real estate or expand a current operation. We have term operating loans, which are for the purchase of equipment and livestock. And then we have our annual operating loans, which are funds to cover operating expenses. And so, some things that I just like to point to hit on, with those loans, our security, cash flows, and gap insurance when we start talking about urban farming. So, these loans do have to be secured at least 100%. So what that means, for instance, if you're looking at getting a loan to purchase a tractor, that tractor will be pledged as security for your loan. In the event that you're borrowing more than $50,000, then we would ask that you pledge additional security if you had it. So if you currently own an ATV, we will look at pledging that as additional security as well. Same goes for the operating expenses, whatever produce it is that you're growing. We will look at pledging that as security. And again, if you have a tractor or another piece of equipment that has some value, has some equity in it, we will look at pledging that as well. Income and expense. Your plan has a cash flow with FSA in order for us to process and approve your loan application. So your operation will have to bring in enough income in order to cover your payments with us. We could also look at, if you have non-farm income, you have a 9 to 5 and also have your farm operation, and you want to contribute money from your job towards the repayment of your debt, or of your debt with us, then we can include that in your operation as well. And then, one of the most important things is probably going to be our NAP insurance that is provided through the program side, which again, FSA, we have what I would say 2 departments, the finance side and then the program side. And the program offers NAP insurance, which is insurance that gives assistance to producers of non-insurable crops. So whenever you have low yields, you lose inventory, or you're prevented from planting, then they can look at providing insurance for your crops, such as produce, different vegetables, and things of that sort. That's pretty much my rundown. Any questions?
That's one of those, and I don't, have to tell you what, I do know her, I know her father, I know him for a long time. Now, on the equipment loan, that you lose rebate, that's over a period of, what, 7 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, 7 years, so if you are an urban farmer and you had to get tiller or small tractors, there's a 7-year repayment period on the equipment, 1 year for the operating side.
That's correct.
Okay, for the operating expenses, seed, things of that nature. Another question in regards to comparative individuals also, you mentioned that security, you will take in other security. Now, we don't want to be a deal breaker here. So we say we were going to be pushing, understanding urban farmers. I've committed also, we're going to work with the city in planning and dealing with urban farms, for the city of Little Rock. Now, if individual they're going to go to FSA to get the farm number, and say they have 3 lots that's contiguous are connected to each other. And they got the farm number for those as a farm. And they have the range worked out with the city. They acquire, they get the farm number, they sign up then for NRCS program to clear a certain debris. And I'm gonna come back to NRCS on that. For certain areas to create more cultivatable space, okay, on that. Now, on that urban farm side, say they would come in for $50,000, and it was to get equipment and for operating expenses. They would have to, these urban individuals would have to pledge other security like the house and stuff on 50,000.
Not on 50,000, no, that's not correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear, because what you're saying, when you have to get in all those security.
Okay.
That's going to be a deal breaker on some of those potential urban farms.
Right.
Okay.
So let me break it. So when we're talking about getting a loan of $50,000 or less for equipment or livestock, yes, we do look for additional security if you have it. However, if we're talking about getting a loan of $50,000 or less for operating expenses, then I'm sorry, I said that backwards. The 7-year loan do not need additional security. If you purchase a tractor is what you pledge as security, that's it.
That's the security.
Yes, for the annual loan, however, if you're getting money for seed, if you're getting $50,000 for seed, fertilizer, vet expenses, things like that, then yes, we want to secure that at 150% if we can. It doesn't necessarily have to be your house. If you have a tractor that is worth another $25,000 or a stock trailer or anything like that, we try our best not to go for that real estate.
Okay. Part of the whole more urban farm, in this area here. So one other scenario, I don't know if probably the security as well.
Yes.
So this is every product. And I'll use this just as an example. So if we're working with the city of Little Rock and some urban farm producers and the Department of Human Services, and they have an agreement, just like, the big farmers do, to sell their produce to the food bank, to the food pantry, supplying the food pantry, and they have an agreement, for that. So with that agreement, then we still have to have added security to that operating loan, and you have the equipment as security. You still have to offer additional security for that micro loan.
For the micro loan, no. If we're talking about getting a loan to purchase additional equipment, no.
No, not the equipment, that's for the operating purpose.
For the operating
For that purpose, for that purpose.
Yes. Because the way we're gonna look at it is, if we're giving you $50,000 for a crop, we're gonna project that that crop is probably gonna be worth $50,000. So that's 100% security. But we wanna try to get to 150% security with those 1-year loans. So if you own a tractor, we're probably gonna take that tractor as well. We wanna get as close to 150% security as possible.
Okay, I'm on the one of the part of me, one of the problems here, but I want to look at mitigating risk, because it's all about mitigating risk.
Yes.
With FSA. But once in that process, in dealing with that, value of contract is one, value of crop is another, let's go with that. That's a part of the mitigation of risk factor, and they've signed up on the program side for that.
Okay.
How does that fit into it on the security?
Okay, so if you signed up for NAP and you do have a contract available, what we do is we take an assignment on your NAP payment. So what that means is that you will sign documentation saying that you agree that FSA can collect your NAP check should you become delinquent on your FSA loan. And so in the event that you do become delinquent, that NAP payment comes out, we will take those funds and apply it to your loan. If you're current on your loan, then there's no need for it, we release those funds right back to you.
So, but the NAP is not used, the insurance is not used the basis of as security.
It can be.
It's to deal with the risk factor there, because they were taking the risk,
Right, it doesn't answer the security because there's no way of determining the value of that NAP, of the NAP proceeds when we're processing that loan.
Okay, now do they determine the value of those proceeds on row crop farmers?
Yes, but so with road crop, with the insurance, we can get an estimated value if they have historical income.
Right.
That's the only way, but if they don't have any history of receiving any crop insurance proceeds, then no, there's no way to evaluate at that point.
I want to, it's been like 2 years too.
Yes, sir.
This Paul, she had a question. Paul?
Okay, my question is the 150% that you asked for on the loan, the additional 50%. Okay, so I have a loan and I put up the 150%. Past the equity of the equipment that I got. So once I did that, okay, I went back and I had to come back because I'm short of payment, so I had to get a refinance. So I already had up to 150% equity, but then they asked for my house. They asked, I purchased 2 acres of land, 2.5 acres of land. I've had to put that up for collateral. What else was it, Ricky? I have a property in Phillips County. I've had to add that. So how much equity? 500%. I've got about $5,000, $500,000 put up, $82,000. So make me understand what I'm doing wrong here, not to just be able to put up my 150% and stop. You took my RV. I mean, I just need to understand, why am I almost to become homeless because I took out a FSA loan?
Yes, ma'am. So it sounds like in your situation that you had to get your loans, well, like you said, refinance.
Yes.
And what we call that is primary loan servicing. Anytime you have a loan with us, you have to come in and get a refinance. We call it primary loan servicing. And at that point, we have to take a lien on all assets, anything that you have available.
That's written in the instructions that you're supposed to take, that you all are supposed to take everything that you own to make us homeless.
No, ma'am, not. So. And I understand, so, it is in our regulations that any assets that are available, we are supposed to take and for you to pledge as collateral for your loan. And they're, more than likely, they're gonna be cross collateralized. What that means, if you have 3 different loans, we're maxing out on all 3 loans. We're saying that this is pledged for loan 1, 2, and 3. That 150% does no longer apply once we refinance. That 150% security is for initial loans. When we come back to refi, we're making sure that all loans are secured with all available assets.
Since you have everything I own as collateral, can I sell my home? And if I get enough equity out of my home, I could pay you off. You couldn't stop me from selling my home and getting out of debt, right?
No, ma'am. So you would actually have to fill out the application and inform us that you are wanting your home released and that you want to take the equity to pay FSA off. And you would have to pay it off. You couldn't just pay 1 loan. You would have to pay it off. Yes, ma'am.
But Ms. Williams, let's make sure we're clear on this. And then we're gonna move on to 2 things. She could get a release because you would have a second lien position on the real property there. So if she asked for a release on the second lien, on your second lien position, because you have the first lien holder, you could do that, and whether she pays you off or not, as long as you still have 150% security on the remaining debt.
No.
You would have to pay you off yourself into the security.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So if she sold any of the security, then any equity out of that security has to go to FSA.
No, yes, any equity from the security will have to go to FSA, but specifically with real estate, she would need that partial release. And in this wrong case, it sounds like the house is pledged as collateral, it's cross collateralized for all of the loans. So the house is tied to all of the loans, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So in that case, she would have to pay those off
Yep.
and get in order to get released.
I want to come back to another question on that, and then I know Barbara's, I'm running out of time, y'all. She would have been good, I've been enjoying this too. But this one question, we're making the hard on myself, with back to FSA, and we're gonna come back to RCS, we're gonna move to a close. FSA, IRA, economic distress. Rules for justified economic distress. I know you mentioned earlier, if you were delinquent so many days, if you had to restructure, refinance your debt, does that apply also that you're entitled to a partial, debt relief?
Possibly. So we would have to look at your cash flow
No,
and.
I'm not talking about this based on what the cash flow is, apparently, you know, she's got to get cash flow, because she's still in business, and still operating, one of the better operators of her performance. But I'm saying, this was doing COVID-19, economic stress periods and things that was going through.
Doing ARPA, are you referring to ARPA?
No, I'm just referring to the Inflation Reduction Act,
Okay.
debt relief, economic distress fund, and delinquent debt,
Okay.
what FSA. So at a given time period, say a year, 2 years ago, apparently fell into economic distress, delinquent restructuring. Does that qualify under RA?
It can,
It
but
can.
it's still. That cash flow 2 years ago, and
Right.
things are still tough now, so you may have fallen behind again. And so that's why I said it goes back to that cash flow, because now with IRA, as I said earlier, they're looking at possibly helping delinquent customers become current.
No, I understand, we've been reading that, I was talking that on the end, Barbara, I understand. I only got 2 minutes left. We're gonna go to the RA Inflation Reduction Act, and this is the purpose of both those who are online, and one of those who are here present, and this is the Farm Service Agency, and those who are landowners and who have operators. Under the RA Inflation Reduction Act, which would have said, those farm operators who are economically distressed or may be delinquent in that debt, then they are paying those debts current and one payment out. Am I right? Okay, that's one, so they're good to go. And I want to make sure we have clarity on that, along with them paying those debts current and one payment out. And Ms. Wilson will correct me if I'm wrong. Then they also, if they were not eligible, then they will become eligible then to go back in to get financing from FSA. Am I correct in that part?
Yes, they can.
Okay, so if an individual are not able to get financing from Farm Service Agency because they're delinquent on their payments, or they get not made, I don't care if it's 5 years, 2 years, 3 years, whichever. The FSA is Farm Service Agency have been paying those debts current and then paying a repayment ahead. And they can go back in and get financing for an operating loan to continue their farm business. If they've been farming and operating as distressed farmers and farming with their credit cards or other means of credit, with their vendors and the seed dealers and the field providers and things of that nature. I mean, they've had some of that to do that, and I know that when we work with them. So that they've had to have a credit application with the fuel supply, credit application with the seed supply, and same thing with the herbicide, pesticides, and fertilizer. So they can now go in, they will be eligible again, and they can go in and get financing, a direct loan from Farm Service Agency that eligible again. If there is an air property situation and a debt was left, and we have these cases, very real cases, if there was a debt left, and it's on air property, and you may not have paid on that debt for the past 15 years, it's been just sort of sitting there. I've been able to make some payments, but a hit and miss situation. But if that debt has been there for 5 years, and you've got a statement, and it's belongs to Treasury, or it's in St. Louis or wherever it goes, from that point, if it's there, and it has a 100% due, $300,000 due in full, then correct me if I'm wrong, then 100% of that debt will be written off, 100% delinquent.
That's gonna be one of those case by case basis that's looked at by our national office. Because if it's been 15 years, as in your example, it has been sitting with our national office, and it's one that they're looking at to determine whether or not that payment can be paid. So I don't have an exact answer on you, it would definitely, that's a case by case matter.
Case like it. Well, right now, it's based on what the way.
It has the potential.
Yeah, yeah. Because the way the rules are written right there, you are, it's 100% due and try pay, it has not been paid over years now. There's always sent retractions, some of them are offsets on social security and things of that nature. Then 100% of that debt can be taken off. I would think they were looking at more at how much reimbursement we do on that with them offset from taxes and stuff like, income tax returns and all that. But okay, but anyway, it is, under the rule is eligible, but under that rule, it's normally looked at by the national office. So if you know anyone, you don't have to have the problem yourself, but if you know anyone, or they have a proper situation, you have an administrator that's been fighting with this debt that's been left, by the heirs, then it's just been sitting there and it's 100% due, and it's gone through what they call accelerated action for foreclosure and all that, then you need to contact FSA. If you have not received a letter, if you have not received a Farm Service Agency letter notifying you that this debt is going to qualify, possibly qualify, then they should contact FSA regarding that debt and eligibility for the debt write-off under the Inflation Reduction Act. In my closing part of remark, and this is not on FSA directed, there's another one out now under what's called 22007, discrimination, on the discrimination side. That's out now. They're moving through a process to select what they call the national administrator. Those individuals that know that they have been, well, they know that they have been, we know we have been, USDA knows it has been, they've been reports saying it. They will be selecting the administrators, and then they will be selecting coordinators that will be dealing with that process and how people can apply probably within the next 30 days or more on that. And Ms. Willis, do you want to speak to that? Any, can I just say a little bit more about it? It's under the Act, it's under the Inflation Reduction Act as well. So along with the debt write-off that they have already began administering, they're going to pay them a whole bunch of money. They write off debt and the possibility in administration of this, and where there are cases that are shown that discrimination has taken place, then they will be able to apply for, and will be sending some additional notices out. Everybody signed in, so we will be sending it by e-letter, and it'll be in our newsletter as well. But if you have, this is not paper, make sure this is also. This has nothing to do with the paper versus Glickman class action lawsuit, because I've asked that question so much, and the answer is no, this has nothing to do with that. This has to do with the equity initiative on the part of this administration that is being implemented as relates to African American population and other minority segments of the population, to deal with the whole issue around equity and equality. Because certain practices did apply, there is a lack of equity within that segment of the population. As a result of the lack of equity being lost, our opportunity for equity because there was not equality, then they are implementing this particular initiative. And again, it's 22007 in the Inflation Reduction Act. And those announcements, this, I'm going to say this, and I'm in, Barbara. I'm really in it right now. But this is not going to be with, it's like Pickle versus Glickman. They had Pickle 1 and Pickle 2. This not going to be no IFA 1 and IFA 2, okay? Inflation Reduction Act, Inflation Reduction Act, RA 1 and RA 2. But under this particular legislation and law, the sign up period and then how people will be able to apply for will be coming. Let me actually mention this also in these notes. And I know Mr. Yarn is saying they should put Kevin up there in front of that mic, so you know how he is. You would think through language and turn those in. It allows us to see what we did wrong and also to help us do better as we put these events on. I'm going to close at this point. Ms. Irvin, Ms. Ashley. Okay. Would y'all announce those sign-up deadlines? This is NRCS behind all the different texts coming in. People want to know what those deadlines are again. There's people online. Deadlines for the high quality equipment program. That's sign-up deadline. Thank you very, very much. Oh, I'm sorry. I had another question over your question. You got a question we have to say? Who's that? Oh, online. There's a question on. I can't see. Do not ask me to operate something up here.
What is how you use personal assets to cover a business loan because the business is incorporated. It's an issue with the method that the business is set up.
If the issue is
Incorporation of it.
How they get operating loan to cover the business if the business is already set up?
okay, so if you have an LLC or a general partnership, and for some reason the members will have to pledge their individually owned assets, there will be just another security agreement where we show that those items will be pledged as security that those individuals will have to sign. And it's just a third party pledge of security.
Are those rules ever going to change? Like
The security rules, not that I know of. I've been with the agency 12 years and it's been the same. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, again, everyone, I really appreciate your participation. I like to do what we call a quick flash evaluation. Everyone that feels that this event was beneficial for them in some form or fashion, would you raise your hand, please? Thank you very much. Everyone who thought I did a good job, I'm just. Nobody did not raise their hand. Mr. Irby, I'm turning over to you to do the closing. Thank you very much.
I want to say a big thank you to Ms. Jessica for answering all my questions.
I want to thank everybody, first of all, for being up in this way. It's been really resource people. Do you guys have business cards? Because a lot of people online, a lot of people want them. Do you have them with you? Okay. If you can give us some, we'd like to pass them out and we'll take them back with us, okay?
But remember what happened, all the agency people, y'all give y'all's contact phone number.
Alvin Peer. My email is alvin.peer, that's alvin.peer@usda.gov.
Start over.
Okay, it's Alvin, ALVin.PER@USDA.gov. My number 501-412-9341. And I can get you in contact with which specialists that you need to know.
Thank you.
Let me do this first. There was a question about the sign of deadlines, in particular the house home. And I think if I got the date correct, it's next week, which is March 13th. I got that date correct. So that's the closing deadline date on the house home. Also, there'll be an opportunity to do the urban planning. We haven't released that announcement yet, but we'll make sure that you all receive that once we release it. But my contact information, my email is Corey, which is COREY .Cornelius, CORNELIOUS, and that's at USDA.gov. That's COREY .Cornelius, which is CORNELIOUS at USDA.gov. And currently right now, my phone number would be 501-301-3122. And if you get Mr. Graff and read on the phone, reach out, Sarah the phone line right now, but you can reach either of us at that phone number. 501-301-3122.
We have a conservation office in every county.
Yes, we are all located in the federal building. We're all state office employees, but there's a NRCS mobile office in just about every county. So when you want to apply for any of our programs, that's where you can start in the local field office.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Jessica Willis, and I'm actually out of the Roanoke County office. My email address is Jessica, JESSICA .Willis, WILLIS at USDA.gov. And my phone number is 501-676-5116. Extension 2. And I just also want to mention that if you have an ARC or PLC contract with Farm Service Agency, that deadline is March 15th to sign up. So please call your local FSA office as soon as possible and make an appointment to go in and get your contract signed.
Okay, and I'm Sherry T. And my email is Sherry, SHERRI .DEG as in George, R as in Brown, A as in Apple, P as in Paul, H as in Henry, E as in Edward, N as in Nancy, R as in Ralph, E as in Edward, D as in Edward, D as in dog, at USDA. And Corey gave my numbers, thank you, Corey. And I just have the CSP IRA announcement. That application deadline is March 14th. And the deadline for Classic is March 31st.
Okay, I want to thank everybody again. You guys enjoy the rest of your evening and be careful out there, okay? This conference has ended.